Good day everyone, and welcome to Deltascape version 2 Savage. As we delve deeper into our memories, we envision an augmented version of our encounter with the abomination Catastrophe. In Savage mode, many of Catastrophe's mechanics will target specific players, and remain predictable as long as all party members are alive. However, any mistakes will be severely punished, and mechanics can quickly spiral out of control if they target unintended players. With regards to abilities, it's important to first revisit 100 Gs. In normal mode, this mechanic would bring all players down to ground level unconditionally. In Savage mode, however, players must be ready to stack within any of the new blue markers in order to be brought back to the ground. This mechanic will target the tanks in most cases, and due to this, all players should generally remain close to the boss, unless mechanics dictate otherwise. The ability Gravitational Manipulation also behaves differently in Savage, this time creating two separate stacking markers, one above ground and one at ground level. In addition, failure to stack 4 players in each marker will result in vulnerability stacks. To satisfy this condition and ensure the party is split evenly, we have tanks and healers always use their levitators, and DPS never use theirs. Tanks should also be wary of Paranormal Wave, which now afflicts targets with gradual petrification, forcing a swap upon reaching 2 stacks. As well as Evil Sphere, a hard-hitting tank buster mechanic that should be mitigated accordingly. And lastly, we have Gravitational Wave. Catastrophe will often execute this mechanic throughout the fight, dealing high damage to the party, and most likely killing any players afflicted with vulnerability. Due to the nature of Catastrophe's other mechanics, it's important to utilize waymarks and assign positions before continuing. Firstly, we assign tanks and healers, or Group 1, to each waymark, followed by DPS, or Group 2, in the same fashion, resulting in each waymark having 2 assigned players. And with these positions in mind, let's go over Catastrophe's main mechanic rotations in order of appearance. The party should begin the encounter with their levitators active, allowing them to bypass the initial earthquake and focus on dealing damage as much as possible. Nearing the 2-minute mark, Catastrophe will cast the first variation of Maniacal Probe, marking the tanks and healers, or Group 1, as tentacle targets. Unlike in the normal version of the encounter, tentacles must be placed manually by the marked players in their previously assigned spots. Tentacles should not be placed too close to the edges, as they merely serve as sensors to detect safe zones, and placing them too far makes it difficult to keep track of all 4 at once. Once the safe zone has been established, the party must remain stacked for 100 Gs in order to be brought back to ground level. At the 3-minute mark, the boss will begin casting negative 100 Gs and mark 4 party members with Gravitational Collapse. The marked players must split between the 2 safe zones at the edges of the arena, and ensure they do not overlap their markers. Nearing the 4-minute mark, Catastrophe will execute the first variation of Unstable Anti-Light, leaving the usual safe spot in the center, but also marking the tanks and healers, or Group 1, with the Unstable Gravity debuff. Shortly after, the boss will jump at the party with Long Drop, a new party stacking mechanic, which also knocks back any players currently levitating. The strategy here is to utilize the knockback to our advantage, pushing the players marked with unstable gravity to their assigned spots before they explode. At the 5-minute mark, the boss will proceed to cast the second variation of Maniacal Probe, this time marking the DPS, or Group 2, as tentacle targets. In addition, upon establishing the safe zone, the party must remain stacked and be ready to execute Gravitational Manipulation at the same time. And finally, nearing the 6-minute mark, Catastrophe will execute the second variation of Unstable Anti-Light, this time marking the DPS, or Group 2, with the Unstable Gravity debuff. While tanks and healers remain centered and grounded, DPS should begin levitating and slightly nudge in their respective assigned directions, in preparation for the knockback. At this point, you have seen all of Catastrophe's mechanics and their variations, but it's important to note he will repeat Maniacal Probe and Unstable Anti-Light, once again targeting the tanks and healers, before he enrages, shortly after the 10-minute mark. Pay close attention to your assigned positions, and remain in close proximity of your party to avoid being stuck on high ground. Once you are acquainted with Catastrophe's mechanics and their timings, it becomes a matter of refining your strategy until you get your kill.